I still train a lot of slow young athletes. And so I really had to start figuring out like what's separating these extremely slow athletes to the faster athletes that I train. I mean, the simple answer is that they can put more force into the ground in less time. And I found that these giant clunky shoes that these young kids, say like a 12-year-old comes in, there's this disconnect from the foot to the brain. There's no response off the ground. You watch a gifted athlete that is naturally springy and there's a response off the ground. I just started experimenting. I would take the shoes off. I would start by just doing like simple warm-up drills, barefoot, simple jumping, simple plyometrics. You could just see the difference. And I was like, okay, I'm onto something here. I started having them sprint barefoot. And then as soon as they started doing it, they loved it. And they're even faster. They're faster barefoot.
Welcome to the Restore to Explore podcast with your soulmates from the Foot Collective. I'm Jim Dooner.
And I'm Mac Lyon, and we're on a mission to empower humans to restore their natural health and function from the ground up,
So we can all explore movement and life with more freedom and confidence.
Before we jump into this week's episode, I wanted to share a little bit about my own barefoot journey. I remember the moment I slipped on my first pair of natural footwear. After years of wearing stiff, narrow, cushioned shoes that kept my feet squished and locked in place, it felt like a light bulb had gone off. It was the first time wearing shoes that I could truly feel the ground beneath me. My feet finally felt free. Those shoes were Vivo Barefoots. Up to that point, I'd never really considered my foot health. I never questioned the shoes I wore, but when I experienced that freeing sensation in Vivos, everything changed. It was one of the reasons I joined the Foot Collective. I began to pay more attention to my feet, realizing how much better they could feel in shoes if I simply allowed them to move the way nature intended. When it comes to feet, one of the most powerful changes you can make for their health is to switch to natural footwear. That's why we look for 5 key footwear qualities at TFC. We call the 5 Fs. Foot-shaped, widest at the tips of the toes, fixed so they can't flip or flop around, flat, a zero drop from heel to toe, flexible to allow your feet to move naturally, and feel to give you the sensation from the ground beneath you. Vivo Barefoot tick all the boxes. And that's why I'm so proud we're partnering with Vivo Barefoot for the Restore to Explore podcast, the world leaders in natural footwear. Their mission is deeply aligned with ours at TFC, focusing on human health and just as importantly, the health of the planet. Together, we're not just promoting better movement, but better practices for our world. So if you're ready to experience the freedom for your feet that I did, check out Vivo Barefoot. It's not just about shoes, it's about stepping into a new way of living and a new way of caring for your body and the planet. We're so proud to be on this journey together, and we have a special offer just for our listeners. If you head to vivobarefoot.com and use the code TheFootCollective, you'll save 20%.
Hello, TFC community. Welcome back to the Restore to Explore podcast. My name is Nick, and today I have the honor of hosting a conversation with Michael Drach. So, Michael, welcome, and thanks for being here.
Thanks for having me.
You're very welcome. We appreciate your time. So, a good place to start, I think, is for people who don't know you. Let's start with your story. So, what do you do today, and maybe a bit about like why you love doing that, and then what path did you take from the very start of your journey of doing what you do now and getting to where you are today? Like any of the meaningful parts of that journey are always worth hearing. So yeah, what you do today, why you do it, and then how you came to be doing it.
Gotcha. I am a sports performance specialist that I specialize in speed and agility development with athletes. And it's all ages. I got some young athletes all the way to professional athletes. And I enjoy training every single one of those ages. And I don't specialize in a single sport. I do almost any sport possible, any sport where you need to move faster, more efficient, jump higher, all that kind of stuff. So I've been doing it 20 years now. Absolutely love what I do. I have lots of friends that I graduated from college that to this day, they don't enjoy what they do. And they are the struggle to go to work each day, where I'm very happy to say I love my job and this is a passion of mine. So
yeah, the struggle is the opposite. It's like, it's hard for me to leave this place.
Yeah, like that. Yeah.
So, cool. Why did you go into this line of work, and where did that start?
Yeah. I mean, ever since I was 2 years old, been obsessed with sport. I was not blessed with size and, strength, but I had a little bit of speed and, good athleticism. And so I excelled at sports early on because of that, but I was always really undersized. And so I knew from a young age that if you were faster and can move better, that you can excel better at your sport. And so, looking back, it's been a passion of mine since I was really, really young. I remember in junior high, I grew up in Wisconsin, right? And where I grew up, there was no such thing as a personal trainer. No one had even like a personal sport coach. There was, you just played your sport. That's all you did. And so I remember building a speed sled out of wood, putting some weights on it and doing sprints in my backyard. I just kind of knew like I want to get better. Even though I was pretty good, I had a good speed, I wanted to always improve at. And so at a young age, it's kind of always been on my mind, like how to improve speed to be better at your sport. And I went and played Division III football at Wheaton College. And, I was 150 pounds coming on my senior year in high school. So I was a little undersized, but I was like, I loved football so much. I was like, I just want to try it out and see if I can handle the college. And it was the best decision I ever made. I absolutely loved my 4 years there, had a good career playing D3 football, made some good friends, and fell in love with even more of the training aspect of sport. And, I worked my butt off all through those 4 years to become the best I could be. And my plan was to be a chiropractor. My dad was a chiropractor. My grandfather was one. I love the field. I wanted to work with athletes to help them improve. But, I kind of realized I kind of wanted to maybe do the football route. And so I decided I wanted to coach football. And I wanted to coach football. I wanted to do the Division I professional route. And so my first year, I stuck at Wheaton College. And I did the graduate assistant coach there, and quickly realized I don't love the coaching football world. And it was really quick. I was like, I love the on the field coaching part of it. I love working with the athletes, teaching them how to, do their position better. But then it was like, hey, it's 7 days a week and you barely see your family. And if you want to climb the ladder, you're moving every couple of years, and you're probably moving your family across the country for the rest of your career. And, that's for some people, that wasn't for me. And so a teammate of mine, his brother started his speed and agility training company. And so right after that, I called him up and I was like, I need a job. Like, just, can you hook me up? And he's like, yeah, you're hired. And so that was pretty much right after I graduated college. I was doing that and I fell in love with it instantly. And so I've been doing it for 20 years now. I worked for that company early on for about 12 years, called TC Boost. Some people in the community might know Tommy Christian, great coach up in the Chicago area. And about 8 years ago, I went out on my own and I moved down here to Tulsa, Oklahoma recently, and been doing that ever since now.
And what kind of facility are you working out of now? What's the square footage? How many people come through the door?
Yeah, so I'm in a dream spot right now. People always ask me, like, can you afford that spot? It's like, well, it's not my spot. It's a giant sports complex that they built this amazing sports performance area in the center of it, and it's underutilized. It's underused. And so when I moved down here, they let me pay rent here, and I can kind of do what I want. And so I don't know how much longer that's going to last. They might have to change a plan down the road, but for now, it's like 10,000 square foot area with 65-yard track and giant turf area for agility work. It's a dream spot for a trainer. So I'm very fortunate. I've been here almost 4 years now. So we'll see what the plan is down the road. I'm always looking for other options just in case, when you don't own your own spot, it's like you could, the landlord could be like, okay, it's time to move on. You don't know. But right now, this is a dream spot.
Amazing. And whenever, if and when you got to get out of there, I'm sure something better is on the other side of that. The universe took inspired to reward people who are doing great work. Sounds like you're doing awesome stuff.
I hope you're right on that one.
So I went to your website. I've been doing less research on people I interview because I've actually found that the less I know about you, the more curious I can be in asking you about you. But I do need to kind of know, like, what do they do? Who are they? And the first thing I saw on your website was a picture, and it's like a really badass picture. It's like you and an athlete within this facility. And obviously I instantly look down at your shoes and I see that you're wearing zeros. And I would guess that the number of professional level strength conditioning, speed and agility performance coaches, let's say movement performance coaches, that whole umbrella, I bet you there's less than 20% that actually wear natural footwear. It's a guess, but I bet it's probably lower. Yeah. And so I guess my question is, what made you part of that? Probably less than 20. Frankly, probably 5%. Let's be real. We're so early, which is crazy to say because so much athleticism can be unlocked at this feet. And it's such a simple unlock. It more so revolves around just stop wearing shoes that lock up your feet. Like stop wearing performance acting shoes. Literally the principle.
Yeah.
So when did feet come on your radar? I'd love to know how feet factor into your training and what you do as well. So when did feet come on your radar? What was that? And then where are you at today and how you embed feet in what you do?
Okay, so I mean, I can go back to when I was a kid. I grew up in middle of nowhere in Wisconsin. We had 2.5 acres of land, and I made my parents grass seed it all. But I was responsible for mowing it. But I loved running around barefoot, and so I was barefoot a lot, and I put shoes on, and I would instantly feel different. And so I remember that all the time as you're growing up. I was like, I want to be barefoot. And so, but then fast forward into, my training career, still train a lot of slow young athletes. And so I really had to start figuring out like, okay, what's separating, these extremely slow athletes to the faster athletes that I train. And, I mean, the simple answer is that they can put more force into the ground in less time. Okay. But then I had to break that down even more. And I found that these giant clunky shoes that these young kids, let's say like a 12-year-old is in, and I'm watching them move. The best way I can describe it is that there's this disconnect from the foot to the brain, right? There's no response off the ground. You watch a gifted athlete that is naturally springy, and they just like spring right off the ground every time they sprint or run. There's a response off the ground. And a lot of these younger athletes, they didn't have their foot is the ground. It looks like dead. And so I was like, I just started experimenting with, a while back, and I would take the shoes off of these athletes. And, I would start off by just doing like simple warm-up drills, barefoot, simple jumping, simple plyometrics. And then you could just see the difference of how they did those exercises with shoes on to how they did them without the shoes. And I was like, okay, I'm onto something here because I can just see it. There's their Achilles tendons are working. Like they're learning how to spring off the ground. I think, gosh, when was the major eye-opening? It was probably when the first Nike Metcon came out. And I was like, oh, this is a flat shoe. This is different. And I started wearing that one, and I was like, this feels different. And so I started recommending that shoe to all my athletes. Still doing a lot of barefoot stuff, but I was like, get the Nike Metcon. And then I think Noble came out with their, first couple of shoes, and I was like, okay, this is similar, so I started recommending Noble and Nike Metcons. That's when I started like taking my athletes, instead of just doing jumping drills and, simple warm-up stuff barefoot, I started having them sprint barefoot. And at the facility I was at, it wasn't a thick turf, but it had enough cushion, right? So I had them start doing warm-up sprints barefoot, because I could see, oh my gosh, they look responsive off the ground. They look springy off the ground. You put shoes on, and they're mute. They hit the ground, and there's no. I was like, all right, let's do these barefoot.
If there's literally, sorry to interrupt, but like the cushioning in a shoe is literally a disruptor from transmitting ground reaction force from the foot to the ground. It's basically a muffler of ground reaction force.
Yeah.
Which people think cushions your body, which is quote unquote good, but they forget that actually we have natural mechanisms that cushion, and not just cushion, that actually like store energy and then release them. And you don't want to just waste the energy. Sorry to put that in.
No, you're right on that. And I would explain to the athlete, because that sometimes they would like, I don't want to run barefoot. Like, okay, you don't have to, but I'm gonna explain like, how would your training session be if I had the whole floor lined up with mattresses and all we did all day was train on a mat? I was like, do you think that your Achilles tendons are going to be, stretching quickly and springing, and your muscles in your feet and the arch is going to be working at the spring? Is that all going to work the same? They're like, no. I was like, okay, like that. Now you get it. Let's try some barefoot stuff. And then as soon as they started doing it, they loved it, and they're getting faster. Like they would run a faster time. And sometimes I go back and forth, like shoes on, run, shoes off, run. And they're faster barefoot. And so it was a big one for them to feel it though. And so to this day, I do. I mean, for a lot, it's not for every athlete, because some of them they can't handle it, and I have to build up to it. But a lot, like I would say, at least 50 to 75% of my session is barefoot. And the stuff that we can't do barefoot is hard change of direction and agility. It's just too much pounding on the foot. And so you need some cushioning for that kind of stuff. But for linear sprints, for a lot of the jumping exercises, we do. Fast forward to we had the Metcon, then the Noble, and then all of a sudden the barefoot shoes started coming out. And they weren't the best looking shoes at the time. Still, a lot of them are.
I agree.
But they're getting better. I was at that time, I was not wearing shoes all day. I was barefoot, or I was in my socks pretty much all day as I trained. And so I was like, well, I think you need some shoes. Obviously, that's going to mimic that. And these barefoot shoes, I've been ever since then, I can't go back to a normal shoe now. You put on, I'm sure you're the same way, you put on a Nike shoe with a high heel or narrow toe box and you just feel like your feet are suffocating. Honestly, it jacks my back up too. And if I wear a shoe that has an elevated heel, my back, I just feel all off up the chain. And so, yeah, that's kind of how I got into the whole barefoot thing and been all in ever since.
Amazing.
We can go in. I mean, I can go into more too. Like,
let's go more.
I need to clarify. I'm not a foot specialist by any.
Hold up. I would like to interject here and ask you how you define foot specialist.
Gosh, yeah.
Because everything, in my honest opinion, is that everything you just said means I would classify you as someone with a degree in physical therapy and knowing full well that physical therapy curriculum hasn't changed largely. It's like minute changes. Knowing what we learn about feet beyond just like simple anatomy. Like anyone can learn that. Google can, ChatGPT can teach you anatomy. Everything you just said makes you have a deeper understanding and more competence at correcting the foot than a physical therapist who might see themselves as a foot specialist. So I think you're a foot specialist.
Yeah. I'm going to say a natural foot specialist. Someone who studies the foot, everything, the movement, the pronation, all this stuff. I don't sit down and study that. That's not my specialty.
And so you don't need to know.
I learn a lot from people who are experts online, and so. But I haven't even touched on the big toe yet. And how that is so.
Okay, let's keep going. Sorry to interrupt. I just wanted to say that because I think a lot of people, even TFC guides who have deep understanding, have done our like heaviest certification on TFC. What I consider them all to be foot experts, like better, more knowledgeable about feet than any researcher or any health professional that has just done base curriculum. Because the reality is, if you just have an interest in the foot and you really learn from the people who are talking about it at a deeper level, at like a deeply functional level with an understanding of how the things you do to your foot affect how your foot adapts and functions. It beyond just like, oh, you have pain, let's treat pain. Like that's a really narrow mindset. But I think people who say I'm not a foot expert, but I know a lot about feet, it's like, we got to just own the fact that you're a foot specialist. You're not a medical foot specialist, but you're a functional strength conditioning foot specialist. And that is actually way more valuable than a medical foot specialist.
I agree. Well said. So
big toe.
Big toe, man. So all these athletes that I have, I have them take their shoes off, socks off, and I would say 90% of them, that big toe is just caved in. And it's like, I tell them, it's like, this is most likely from the shoes and cleats you've been wearing your whole life. And I was like, I'm the same way. Like my left big toe is more than the other one, and it just so happened that my left big toe, the one that's caved in more from stuffing them in tight cleats my whole life, that's the side of my body that has all these injuries, and is it linked? I think so. I can't 100% clarify that, but that big toe is so important for your stability, and it's so important for your ability to move linearly. Like it's how your body pushes the ground behind you. And so for speed and agility, that's huge, right? And so big toe problems that I see, for one, if that big toe is just completely smashed in, like that's not going to be able to grip the ground, and it's going to give bad feedback to the brain and how to balance and move. And so you can strengthen that just simply by, taking the shoes off. So can they get it back to where it's wide again? Yeah, it's going to take time, and it's going to take a lot of effort on their part to do that, doing all the protocols, toe spacers, all the exercises like that. And so, but just taking the shoes off, that big toe starts to get strong again. And then you lack big toe extension, big toe flexion. That's going to really hurt how the athlete moves. And so I'll have an athlete, test how much flexion they can get into that big toe. And if that big toe cannot bend, they cannot drop their shin and push horizontal. And so what happens in acceleration is they get a more vertical shin, and their force is going more down than, or what happens is they'll start turning their feet out. And so you get that in the walking gait as well. If that big toe is not going to move, the body's going to compensate and figure it out. Okay, it's like, well, hey, I'm still needs to move forward, which means I got to put force behind me. How am I going to do that? Well, the body will turn the foot out so they can and avoid that big toe move. And so
I see the turning actually makes the big toe get pushed even more, because now your force vector is through the side of the toe, not through the axis.
Yeah. So it just keeps getting worse and worse and worse. So yeah, I tell all this to my athletes who have these issues, and it clicks with them. And all of a sudden, these athletes are buying, the Barefoot shoes. They're buying, some toe spacers. And I'll tell one funny story. I trained a defensive end for the Vikings years ago, named Fadi, and certainly gifted, just like so powerful, played at Northwestern, and that's how I got linked up with him in Chicago. And he came to me right before COVID, and his big toe was not moving at all. And so every time he would accelerate, his heel would drop, just like collapse down, right? So the brain's not letting him have a solid foot contact because the big toe wouldn't bend. And even though he was extremely explosive and still extremely fast, I was like, you're missing so much power here. You're missing so much force being able to put in the ground because of that I think that big toe doesn't want to move, and your brain is kind of shutting that down every time you hit it. It didn't connect. I trained him for about a month, and COVID hit. He stopped training. I never trained him again. About a year ago, I get a call from him randomly. I haven't talked to him like 3 years. I get a call from him, and of course I'll answer it. I was like, "Fadi, what's up, man?" He's like, "Bro, I gotta tell you something. A light bulb went off in me." I was like, "Okay, what happened?" He was like, all of the stuff that you were telling me in our month or two of training about the big toe and all, it's like, I'm going to be honest with you, it made no sense to me. It didn't click. But he said about half a year ago, I purchased some Barefoot shoes. Yeah. And all I did was just walk around in those Barefoot shoes. And he said, I felt my range of motion in my big toe improve. I felt my feet strength improving. He's like, Drach, it's like, I'm faster now than I ever was before. And all I did was just change my shoes. And it's like, I wanted to let you know that even though I didn't get it then, I get it now. And what you were saying was right. And so it was like a really good conversation to have. It's like, hey, it's like, I'm glad it clicked for him. He said it was too late in his career. He's now just recently retired. But if you can improve the strength of the feet, it's going to help a lot with how an athlete moves and honestly on how they feel too.
Yeah. That's a great story. There's way more barefoot or natural shoe brands now than there was before. So I think that's helpful to the culture changing because now they don't look like shit. There's more options. Connect you with Evan at Tolos Footwear. They make really good shoes and I use them for...
I have tried them. They're awesome. Yeah, they're awesome.
Nice.
Yeah. I've tried a lot of them. I am always... My wife gets mad at me every time I buy a new pair because I'm just like really curious about, basically I want to find the perfect shoe for training.
Yeah. What's your most perfect so far to date? Like right now, what do you recommend?
The 0360, if I'm going to be completely honest. It has a little more, cushioning, like I said, for the agility. You do need that for the agility stuff. And so is it the best looking shoe? Absolutely not, in my opinion. Sorry, Zero. It's a functionally great shoe.
Make them look
functionally great shoe, but
them look better.
They are improving, definitely. I got the new ones on right now, if you can see.
What is it?
I don't even know what it's called. It's a brand new one. It's got a little bit of cushioning on it.
Oh, it looks more like an old school Converse or something like that.
Yeah, it does. And so...
Yeah. And their Primus and their like Nexus, like some of the new designs are good. Steve, if you're listening, you might eventually listen to this. Make the 360 look better because
they're looking awesing.
Drop will get more
improving a lot. And I don't... right now, I would be honest, like with the listeners, I am not affiliated with the brand current. I did a little, short stint with Vivo promoting their stuff. And, I love what Vivo is doing. Definitely most of my athletes will wear the 0360 though.
Because it's also more affordable. Because Vivo,
yeah.
You got to create a shoe that's around Zero's price to compete with that market. Yeah, and it just goes to show that like literally, even as a performance coach, lower body health professional, even like a foot specialist, probably the most effective thing you can do to enhance someone's foot health, to help them enhance their foot health, is get them into better shoes. And I think this is something that's not widely known, but I think it'll be like an all or none thing. When the culture changes and people realize, actually, I got to talk about shoes with every person I see if I work with the lower extremity, because it's a huge factor. Just from the simple fact that if you get them out of shoes that are literally disabling and damaging and deforming their feet, they will be better. Like, not rocket science, not that hard to understand. I think just most people just don't know how important. I think most people still don't know how important feet are and why they should care. That shoes are doing that to their feet, and that a lot of lower extremity issues can be attributed to just dysfunctional feet because of shoes.
Yeah, I'll give you a little hot take right here, and
yes,
I have not ever said this publicly because I know there's gonna be a lot of people who disagree and they're like, show me the research. But I'm like, it makes sense to me. I want to be like,
Share your opinion. You have a lot of experience. I don't give a shit about research. I care about people who are in the trenches every day and see patterns and feel strong about something.
I personally really feel confident that the majority of our non-contact ACL injuries are because of the shoes that the athletes have been wearing their whole life.
I agree. I would just add chairs. I would add chairs because it might be bigger in high school. I treat a lot of ACLs, but yeah, I agree.
And I mean, the majority of the athletes I train are junior high and high school athletes. And I think I've had, in those years, the majority of them have been female, probably 60% female. I think I've had one girl who trained with me for an extended period of time for her ACL. That's it.
One.
And she was very, like, I was shocked it took her that long to do it because her knees were so hyperextended to begin with. But I feel like a lot of that was because we focused so much on the foot strength. And there's so much, I understand. There's so much more that goes into it. So people that are listening are freaking out right now. There's so much more that goes into it.
Who cares about that? If they're freaking out, freak out.
That's right. So, but it's like, training the foot, but training how the foot reacts into a loaded eccentric cut, right? And so you can train an athlete to cut more efficiently and better, but the foot is the foundation. The foot is the foundation.
Because from a circular point, it's like the foot tells the hip what to do. The hip protects the knee.
Exactly.
The foot doesn't tell the hip. The hip can't do its job. Plus, if you're sitting all day, the hip's already hard. It's already hard for the hip to do its job. And then your knee gets obliterated, but it's not the knee's fault.
Yes, 100%. And so I feel like in the training that if you can focus on the feet, getting them stronger, the foundation stronger, and then you load up some fast eccentric movement, cutting, gator jumps, like load that up. And so the body can learn how the foot can learn how to be the foundation into a cut, which you can tell the hip how to stabilize the knee. And so
100%.
Now, I know a lot more goes into it, but I really feel like if you can get stronger, you're going to help, not just stronger, but functioning right, because shoes not only weaken the feet, but a high heel is going to damage the athlete's center mass. It's good. Like the whole center mass has to shift to stabilize. Their ankle dorsiflexion goes to trap because they're in an elevated heel all day. And I tell my athletes, I was like, what would happen if I wore high heels or you wore high heels all day?
You ever try running in high heels?
It's like your calf is at a shortened state. And so what do you think your ankle mobility is it's gonna get affected by that? And so that usually resonates. And I tell the athletes, what would happen to my hands if I wore oven mitts all day for my whole life? It's like, would my hand strength improve or get worse? Easy for them. It'll get worse. Would my ability to feel and when I grab something, would those sensors get dampened or would they improve? They would get dampened because of it. It's like, well, that's what we're doing with our feet all day. Wearing these big, clunky, padded shoes that are just destroying the feedback from the brain and how we're supposed to move. And I was at my oldest daughter's 7. She's a cheerleader, right? And so I went to her second grade cheerleading event where it was a second and third grade basketball game, girls, right? And I'm watching this, and this was 2 weeks ago, and I was looking at this, and I'm like, it looked like all of these girls had giant shoeboxes on their feet, and that's how they were moving. And I was like, how can people not see this? I was like, if you take the shoes off these athletes right now, and they were barefoot playing basketball, they would move so much different. But there was such a disconnect on how they were moving, and there was just punky shoeboxes, and all these girls were moving so poorly.
Because some of them go down their ACLs. A lot of girls especially basketball, are tearing their ACLs. And it's so shitty because it really does affect your biomechanics and your proprioception in that joint forever. And it's completely preventable by just not making them sit as much during the day, and don't make them wear things that dumb their feet down. Like, don't let them wear pillows on their feet when they're playing basketball. It's not good.
Yeah.
So maybe it's the gym teachers almost that, it's like, who can convey this information the quickest? Because frankly, if you only convey it from a health professional or, a disease care provider, someone's already broken down to go to that person. So that's not even the best place to do it. I think it's parents, number one. Mm-hmm. In the Foot Collective, it's like, we're not just trying to educate the pros or the movement professionals. It's like just everyday people who have feet, who also might be parents. Parents create the culture for the children. And I think, whether it's phys ed teachers or mostly just parents, It's almost like when someone in a family decides to take their foot health seriously and learns all these things, they kind of like emanate that to the rest of their family, right? Depending how close you are, how much you care about helping your family might determine how many family members. But how does a conversation about shoes? So you have an athlete comes in to see you, because they're big clunky foot pillows when they come in to see you. What kind of conversation are you having with? How are you talking to them about footwear? I'm always curious to hear, like, how do people talk about footwear? It obviously depends who you're talking to in a big way, but I would say, like, how about this? An athlete who loves his shoes, who is like into shoe culture, loves his shoes. How are you having that conversation from a performance standpoint?
That's the hardest one. The kid is the ones that love their shoes because they will not go away from their Jordans. They will not go away from Ultra Boost or all those shoes. It's really hard to convey them. And I tell them too, is like, I would rather you wear, shoes and train with me and wear a good barefoot shoe throughout the day. It's throughout the day. I think that is the big one. But they won't do it. The newer models though, all these shoe companies are coming out with, Zero's got some good new ones. Vivo's got some good street style. Barracks, I can throw them out there. Yeah, I really like their style. But I want who's going to be the first big company that's going to make this change? Nike, Adidas, Under Armour. Who's going to be the first one? New Balance. New Balance was close with the minimum.
They were, and then they went off the path.
And so it's like, who's going to be the first one to make this change? I mean, they'd be smart to do it.
I think they'll acquire. It's so hard for them to probably wrap their heads around. My guess is that it's so hard to change over everything, mostly from the standpoint that in order to sell natural shoes, you will cannibalize all your other shoes because you're essentially, people are going to be like, well, what about the other shoes?
Yeah.
So it's very hard for them. What I can see is that they acquire a natural shoe brand and run it in the background as a subsidiary, but not like a publicly known thing. So they keep their branding. But when enough pain happens, either on behalf of the athletes that they're sponsoring, because that could be a source of pressure. I know way more professional athletes now that are pushing back saying, I'm just going to put my foot down and say, I don't want to, you're literally making me compromise my body. My body matters to me as an athlete. I don't want to stand for this. So either make better shoes for me, make better shoes for the public, or I'm going to, and I know a lot of athletes. Here's the interesting thing. A lot of athletes will go down the route of, okay, I say the same thing. Your daily drivers, the shoes you wear the most frequently have the largest impact on your feet. So if you're spending time barefoot when you can, wearing shoes that respect your feet when you're just going around day to day, then, 80-20, you can 20% of the time you can wear your sports specific things. And if you have to wear a certain brand or certain gear, you can do that. The irony is they're like, okay, that's cool. And then they're just like, fuck that. I refuse to wear that now because now I know even more that these are terrible. Sorry if I'm swearing, but it's like, so that's literally, they're like, I can't unsee what I just saw and felt. I don't want to go back and literally compromise my performance during game time. It's the silliest thing ever. So it might be athletes that start to push back, or it could just be customers. Like when customers start to say, hey, Nike, I'm not going to buy any of your shoes until you make a shoe that's shaped like my foot and doesn't numb me from the ground. At least make one. You can keep all the other ones. You can do that if you want, but at least make one. And I know some background stories at Nike about the Minimus. And, there was a lot of discussions about the fact that this is a mutually exclusive thing. Like we can't make terrible shoes that obliterate people's feet and market shoes that don't obliterate people's feet because people will confuse. It will be very confusing for brand image. So I think it's just going to be these small brands. My theory is we're going to go away from these centralized giga brands like Nike, Reebok, Adidas, and we're just going to go to more smaller brands. So they're like decentralized, higher volume of brands. Maybe they make fewer models, but it'll be a marketplace of more choice. There will be like cultural winners and, companies that win by making just real cool products. And I think some of the ones that I like to look at are ones that are sort of making shoes within the archetype of like a Chuck Taylor or a Stan Smith or an Air Force One even. This Oni brand from Spain or
is that how you say it? Yeah.
I don't know how you say it.
I was like, Oni?
Yeah. Let's go with Own. I'll get to ask the guy.
I like those shoes too, yeah.
I like those shoes. And I think when more choice and more availability happens, because people need to be able to try these shoes on, there's not a lot of places that do that. I think it's going to change. So you've been doing this for 20 years, which is actually super impressive, right? As a strength and speed coach or what is it? Speed and agility coach. You're like a veteran in this industry because it's probably not that old of a specialization. Are you seeing a change in the speed at which people are either open to the footwear conversation or are just educated about it? Like, are you seeing a change from when the first half of your career till now? Is it accelerating? Is I'd love to hear your take on this.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's an easier sell to my athletes when I get them barefoot and they run. The fact that I can have sprint timers, I have a 1080 sprint, and so I used to only would do like max velocity work barefoot. The ones that can handle it because it is a lot of force from the ground, and some athletes just can't handle it. But the ones that did it, their times were faster immediately, and they're like, I felt so fast. I was like, yeah. It's like you're responding off the ground. The brain likes the feedback from your foot hitting the ground. And then and then I started doing the acceleration with the 1080, and it was like it's instantaneous. As soon as I take the shoes off, they're running, and so they're sold.
Yeah, because that you don't have to sell anything. You just say, let's time you, and you tell yourself where you're faster.
Yeah, and so it's like, okay, they're sold. And then I tell them, okay, we need a better shoe that can this is what the shoes are doing to your feet. And so it's much easier to sell if you can show them sometimes numbers, but honestly, just the feel of them running barefoot, jumping barefoot, they feel the difference. But I mean, the fact that I'm trying to think now, Zero's coming out with a basketball shoe, right? And so you got a professional NBA and a WNBA athlete that's going to be promoting it. And so it's like, if you say that, that's huge. And Zero, I'm really curious about that shoe because that to me sounds like the kind of training shoe that I've been looking for, right? The one that can handle the lateral movement, the side to side, and not get a bruised heel from hitting the ground so hard. And so, but yeah, the more I think professional athletes are wearing it, I think I saw Chris Paul wearing Vivos in a post recently.
Cool.
And so I think that's going to help convince these younger athletes to try them out. And so.
Very cool. Do you have a pro shop? Do you sell anything, any equipment or anything like that in your facility?
I don't know.
Because eventually to me, it seems like you would be in line with, we go from a select few giant companies making shoes to many small ones. I think actually the distribution model for shoes should also change, where instead of having these big retail stores that have a wall of 200 shoes, it's like your gym selling 2 shoes because it's a pain in the ass business I run a shoe store. I'm part of Canada's largest natural footwear retailer called Soul Freedom. So I know behind the scenes of there's sometimes a lot of headaches with footwear, especially if you're sipping it. But if you're doing it in person, there's way less headaches because people can try them on, they know what they're doing. And if you don't have that many models, it's like, wouldn't it be nice if you said, instead of sending someone to a website where they don't even know what size they're trying on, you should just be able to buy shoes from you because you know the most about what shoes people need for their training. That's the reality. And I think, whether it's in physiotherapist clinics or strength conditioning gyms or speed and agility gyms, I think that's where footwear gets sold and people acquire their footwear from the people who know the most about feet instead of just from the store with the most crappy shoes, basically. And as a
that I've actually had that idea. So just logistically, that's going to be harder to get to. But that's honestly, I'll be the athletes right away. Hey, here's a bunch of models, try them out. I do have I call it the shoe box. When athletes outgrow one of their barefoot shoes, they donate it to me. And so I do have probably maybe 10 to 15 pair of different sizes of barefoot shoes. So when an athlete comes in, they can actually try and train in them and see how they feel about it. And so sometimes that deters kids from buying their own because they know they can come in here and use mine. But
that's all right. They're still learning something very potent. And when they go to buy, they're going to be adults eventually. They're going to buy their own shoes. They're probably going to buy the right kind of shoes. So that's good.
Yeah.
When you were talking about the big toe and ankle and the foot likes to hit the ground. Hitting the ground is actually just this crazy important feedback signal and energy storage. The kinetic force is going to zero because the potential force in your ligaments and tendons is going up. And you have to be able to release that in order to kind of take advantage of it. But if there was a really good way to decrease how much power and glute drive someone could have, remove their ankle dorsiflexion, remove their big toe extension. Because I heard Greg Cook talk about this. He said that when you're walking, end range dorsiflexion triggers a neural signal to the brain to fire the glute. It's almost like that sequential trigger. Where when I go to dorsiflexion, glutes fire. That's just a motor archetypal pattern for walking and acceleration. And if you remove the ankle dorsiflexion, you remove the signal. And it basically, it's what you're describing, this disconnect between the brain and the body part where the signal just fizzles, just goes away. It just disappears because there's something blocking that transmission. And when you look at shoes and you look at, there's rubber and then there's a big pillow or layer of cushioning or an air bubble or something like that. And then there's your foot. just bring things in the limit, right? I don't know if you remember these moon boots things where you're like literally in these like elastic bags. It's like,
Yep.
would you do sports in those? No, because
No.
it's squishy and it destabilizes you. Okay, not to that extent, but to some extent, shoes with cushioning are destabilizing you. And it's just not, when you interact with that concept and talk to enough people about it, you can describe it where people listen to it and they're like, that makes complete sense. Like, how did I know any different? It takes a while for it to actually sink in. But even with some players, I do pickleball facilitations, and you have some older players coming in, just starting for the first time, and they come in with Hokas with like an inch of cushioning.
Yeah. Yep.
And they're clunking around the court, like blasting their ankles. And I'm like, oh my God, you need to take those off. You're not allowed to go barefoot, but you need to get a shoe that isn't on a pillow because you're not going to be as good of a player.
You worn Hokas before? Have you tried them?
I haven't, but I should, just to get the experience.
I mean, I have athletes that come in with Hokas, and I'll put them on, and I'm like, my gosh, like I feel so unstable. I feel like I'm on stilts. It's just so crazy. I'm like, how can you wear them? Possibly think that you could train in them. Yeah.
Yeah, it's crazy.
But back to the ankle dorsiflexion thing. Ankle dorsiflexion. I found like the athletes that are the hardest for me to improve, the ones that they're trying to get faster acceleration, they're trying to get faster top speed. The ones that I think get the least amount of improvement are the ones with really bad ankle dorsiflexion. And I have not. I mean, I can help it out, but I've not figured that one out completely. How to improve that one with an athlete in one session a week. I can give them homework to do things, but man, if I can come up with a protocol to just increase that with my athletes, and they would actually do it, that would be a game changer for them. And I tell them all the time, like, this is really hurting your speed. This is really hurting your development. It's hurting your vertical jump. It's hurting your future health of your knees, but that's a hard one.
The simplest protocol that I found that was most effective was go to flat shoes. Like literally just stop wearing anything that's ramp. So that automatically will help. Eliminate ramped shoes. Go at least on a 30-minute walk a day. Like if you can't do that, you don't have enough control over your time in your life. So 30-minute walk a day. And then for every hour you spend chair sitting, do 3 minutes per side of like an intentional anterior hip opener, like a kneeling glute drive into hip extension. So for every hour of sitting, 3 minutes per side, ditch ramped shoes and go for a 30-minute walk. I clinically, that was like the most potent protocol for people who actually did it. And frankly, for most people, the walk required a prompt. They literally had to schedule the walk in their calendar or else it just they just didn't do it. But if they did it, it was insane how quickly they got their dorsiflexion back with like a knee to wall test. Or for me, the resting squat, feet hip width together, feet straight was like a really nice screen for ankle dorsiflexion. And it is crazy. It's like most people don't need to train extra stuff. They just need to stop doing the things that are detraining the abilities they're trying to increase. And that alone can be extremely powerful.
Good way of putting it, for sure.
Because then it gets people to think about the negative. It's like, I should stop doing things that are going against my training. Whereas it's not, they don't need more hip mobilizations to do or more of this stuff. Do you see a difference in the speed and agility abilities of multi-sport athletes versus specialists? Is that a pattern that you've ever kind of noticed or come across?
Rephrase that for me. Say that again.
So if you get an athlete in and they're a specialist and maybe it's just not a known thing. Like if it's not in your intake survey asking what other sports they have or currently do play. But do athletes that play more sports typically have differences in their sort of incoming speed and agility sort of abilities?
Okay. So
I don't know if that makes sense.
No, it does.
Question.
Loaded question, because
It is.
we do know, multi-sport athletes, it's better for you, right? Because you're hitting different movement patterns. You're playing. There's different reactions. There's different cutting. There's different. Basketball is different than football. Football is different than track. And so, like all these different sports, like yes, that's really good. Problem is all these sports are now club sport. They're not seasonal. They are all year round. And so you get a soccer athlete playing club. It's all year round. And then they want to do track. And then they want to do this other sport. And so like you get these 3-sport athletes, but it's not like they have seasons where they're doing one sport only, then this sport, and then this sport, which is awesome. But they're doing sometimes 2 sports on top of each other. They overlap. And so you can hear that dinging on your end. No, okay.
No, I can't.
Getting some text messages there dinging. Anyway, and so the athletes that are multi-sport now they're the ones that are coming in my opinion, more injured, more banged up. And it's hard to train them because it's like, the majority of the athletes that train come in once a week. I'd love to get them in twice a week, but they're doing so much. And so I'm navigating how to do a session with them because they're banged up. And
Yeah, you almost have to look at it as some sessions might just be recovery from the other sport.
exactly it. And so, yeah, they're trying to come to me, get faster. Sometimes their times aren't improving. And I'm like, well, what'd you do this week? Yesterday I did this. I'm like, oh, well, your legs are shot. Your nervous system is just shot. Like your nervous system is so fatigued. There's no way you can hit max velocity and improve. And so I had to have that conversation with them. And then you get the different kind of athlete too. The athlete that I love working with, but the ones that are really highly motivated, that are just doing they're doing, I just joined boxing. Why? From a hand speed, why do you need hand speed? I try to ask them all these questions, like, why do you think you need it? And then, I'll break it down. I can't remember who said this first, but basically it's like, you got to view training as you get 10 points to spend. How are you going to spend those points? Because if you overspend, you're going to go in debt. And so I'll get on the whiteboard with these athletes. Okay, all right, you want to do boxing twice a week. Those are 2 coins. You want to get better and faster. Okay, those are 2 speed sessions. You've got basketball 4 times a week. You got your personal basketball session this week. And so I'm like, and all of a sudden they start to see, okay, maybe I can't do it all. But in their head, they're like, more is always better. And I feel like that's the same thing with these club sports too, because not only are they playing club sports, but they have their personal sessions for soccer. So they meet with a personal soccer coach 2 or 3 times a week on top of their soccer practice.
Man, that's so intense. These kids are like pro athletes, basically.
Honestly, it's really intense. I mean, looking back, I would have loved that. Like, I know I would have loved that because all I wanted to do was play sports all day.
Right.
I didn't have that. So, but it gets some trade-off.
It has a trade-off.
It has a trade-off. And so it's really hard for these younger athletes who do want to get better, who do have these high goals of playing, college or professional, but so the multi-sport athlete we know is good, but if it comes to the point where these sports are overlapping and they don't actually get a break from the sport, I think that I would rather have an athlete do one sport and train with me to make up for those other movement patterns, than being completely like shot all the time and have injury after injury after injury. So that's what loaded question, but I hope that answered it.
That was a good answer. Wasn't the answer I was expecting, but it was a good answer. Are there any screens that you really like? Like when an athlete comes to see you for the first time, for example, and you don't know anything about how they move, how does that first session go? Are you using any screens? And is there any favorites that you do because of how much information you get from it? Or I'd love to hear a little bit about what your intake's like.
I don't use screens, and I probably should. I've used FMS in the past. My screen, the best way I
fan of FMS. I don't know if it has.
And that's why I stopped using it.
Yeah.
Honestly, my screen is watching them run.
So you do screen. That's your It's like so observation of movement.
Yeah. So the first day I get an athlete, I'll put them through max velocity, and I'll put them through acceleration, and I'll work on their mechanics, and we'll spend the hour just doing those 2 things. And I'll teach them. I'll drop on a board. I'll show them videos. But I can see a lot with just, and it took me a while to get to that point where I can just watch someone run once or twice, and then I can see, okay, it looks like he's not getting any hip extension. Why is he not getting hip extension at max velocity? Is it a big toe? Is it an ankle dorsiflexion? Is it actually that he can't get the range of motion through his hip flexor, or is it the hamstrings that are tight that are restricting it? So like, if I see that, then I can kind of explore from that a little bit more. And now I'm not a physical therapist. I'm not an expert in all this stuff. So like, if I see a major problem, I'd rather send them out to someone who I know can address those things. I got a team of people here, not at this facility, but I got a team of people that I recommend my athletes to. Like, I got a great chiropractor. I got a buddy of mine who, I don't know if you dove into the world of square one technique, Sean Sherman, the whole nervous system technique. That is mind blowing on what that can do. And so for you listeners out there, this is a free shout out to Square One and Sean Sherman and my buddy Javin Bowman. But I've had athletes that I had a kid, last month, junior high kid, reaches down and touches his toes. He literally is like below his knees. It's always had his whole life. And I sent him to my buddy who addresses the nervous system, because the nervous system is telling the body what to do, right? And within 5 minutes, the athlete was touching his toes, and all he did was adjust the nerves. And so it's like, okay, I could have done all these range of motion things with him. I could have done all this stretching, mobility stuff, full range of motion, lifting, which is great for improving mobility. But if the nervous system is holding on to it for some reason and not letting go,
if that doesn't go, nothing else goes.
Exactly. And so it's pretty crazy stuff. It seems the kind of voodoo and that kind of stuff, but I've seen it with my athletes over and over again that you address the nervous system, they can get better range of motion in their ankles, in their, I had a guy.
The nervous system is the governor. The only people who think that's voodoo are people who actually don't understand the nervous system.
Exactly.
The nervous system is psychedelic, crazy, alien tech.
We don't understand it yet. We don't completely understand it. And so it's new. But if you haven't experienced it, you're just going to say, oh, where's the research on that? There's no proof. But if you actually go through it and haven't yourself tried it, it's like, holy cow, we're onto something here. But there's a professional soccer player here in Tulsa who his big toe was locked. He said he broke his toe a year ago when I met him, and he had no range of motion. And so you watch him run, it totally changed how he run. And he's done everything to improve that big toe range of motion. I was like, just try the square one system and see what it can do. He literally, Jevin, my guy, a buddy here, he did 10 minutes of just resetting the nervous system around the big toe. And then he gets off the table and he had full range of motion on his big toe. And he literally was like, what did you just do? And I was like, wow, this is cool stuff. I was like, so yeah, hearing stories like that, it's like, okay.
But there's not always be the case. But the fact that it can be, that cases like that can happen means that if you're not factoring in that can happen and there's some mechanism there that could stop that from happening, then you're missing out on part of the equation.
Yeah, I mean, you got to think of what's the nervous system's job? When an injury happens, like that guy, he broke his toe. Well, the nervous system is going to protect it. It's going to protect. It's going to keep you from using it because it needs to heal, right? But then it also wants to keep you moving. So you have to learn how to compensate. And so you have these injuries that create compensation patterns, and you move differently. And then these compensation patterns cause another compensation pattern. So you have years and years of compensation patterns built on top of each other. And so if there's a way to reset the nervous system and all of a sudden, like pretty quickly, you can get some pretty cool results. And I've seen it with the feet. And so that's kind of, I know that was probably not where the route you wanted to go down today, but the nervous system is pretty fascinating stuff. And so, like I said, I'll send people away to someone who is better than me in these areas. Let me do the speed training, and I'll do what I can. But if there's someone who's better than me in addressing those issues, I'll send them away. Do that.
Yeah, and it's good to have your own network of people you've sort of vetted and validated. Right. The worst thing you can do is just blindly send someone to a physio and then go and see someone that just doesn't actually enhance their performance, is literally just making them more dependent and maybe not being effective.
100%.
The two screens that I think would be interesting if you wanted to implement simple screens: single leg balance, barefoot for 60 seconds, eyes open, and for high level athletes, eyes closed. If they can't stand on one leg and balance for 60 seconds with their eyes closed, it's the easiest, the highest ROI, in my opinion, because just getting to that point when you can do that means you gained enough that your body protects itself faster. So that's one. And then two is resting barefoot body weight squat, feet parallel and straight, heels on the ground. And for me, the biggest thing with that is when you drop down to a squat and you're just like, boom, this should feel comfortable. And you're just like chilling out there. And then someone's like, oh, okay, I should be able to do that because that looked easy. And then they can't get down and actually rest there. It triggers something where like, shit, I don't have something that clearly I should have. It's a human resting position. So those two screens are like my favorite. And if you did start, I'd be super keen to hear about what insights you got from those screens, because the single leg eyes closed balance is like their speed from when they can't do that. Because here's what it tells me. Their nervous system doesn't know how to react quick enough to keep their center of mass over their basic support. And I feel like by getting that, just with some simple balance training, like on the Soulmate, the TFC mix, or just single leg balance training, making it fun so people actually do it. When you get that, I'd be so curious to see what their speed and agility is like, because I think it would be a direct carryover because it's just nervous system efficiency. So
yeah, no, you're spot on. And then you could throw in there, and have you dove down the world of eye exercises?
I've started to dabble, but I haven't gone that deep. But it's intense.
It's intense. I mean, that was, when I was first, that is part of Square One is the eyes too. But I remember like when I first went to the Square One conference, and I had, I know we don't have much time, but I did have like some pretty serious issues that I was dealing with. I had a benign tumor in my neck that was on the vagus nerve and sympathetic nerve, and my jugular vein was shut off because it was too big. And so I had all the backflow blood pressure onto my eyes. And so I'm still dealing with that. I got the tumor taken out a year ago. I'm feeling so much better, but my eyes were all messed up from it. I had 5 times the amount of pressure on my ocular nerve. And so ever since then, I just feel like that there's a disconnect between the world and what I'm feeling. And just doing simple eye exercises like VORs, like staring at a pen or your thumb, moving your head back and forth, like instantly I felt like my posture was different.
Fascinating.
And I was like, whoa. And then think about it, it makes sense. Okay, my eyes are they see the world and they're sending feedback to my brain on what equilibrium is. And so if the eyes aren't tracking right, or if they're not doing their job right, it's going to send bad feedback to the brain. And that's going to change posture. Well, that's going to change how we move, how we walk, all that kind of stuff. There's so much more we don't even know yet, and we're just learning about. But it's pretty cool stuff when you start seeing it for myself personally, but also with your.
Completely agree. Very interesting. There's so much more to learn about the human body, and the magic of it just keeps kind of like, it's like an onion. The deeper you go, the more you realize, oh, wow, it's way crazier than I thought. I'm already 2 minutes over. I told you I wouldn't keep you longer than the hour. So let people know where they can find you, all the coordinates, and then we'll wrap up.
Yeah, Instagram is probably my biggest one, at Drach Performance. It's mostly speed and agility content, but also you get some foot knowledge in there as well. I try to get creative in how I convey and how important the feet are and barefoot shoes and stuff. YouTube, TikTok, barely on those things, but I have some programs available for purchase as well. I made a program called Ladder is Not Dead. Ladder's Not Dead. It's for agility ladders. And for years, I've been frustrated that all these athletes and trainers use the agility ladder, but it actually doesn't do anything for agility. So I revamped it and I made a program that how to use a ladder to actually improve your agility and your ability to change direction quickly. And then my speed program is called Lightning. I took a lot of time in these programs. And so if you want to get faster and improve your agility, take a look.
Amazing. Great lead off. Thanks, Michael, for your time. Thanks, everyone, for listening. We'll catch you on the next Restore to Explore podcast. Ciao.
Thank you.
Thanks for joining us on the Restore to Explore podcast. If you enjoyed this episode and want to hear more, the best way you can support us is by leaving a review and subscribing wherever you are catching this episode. If you want more free TFC training and education, are after some of our training tools, some natural footwear discounts, or want more specialized guidance from a trusted TFC health professional, then thefootcollective.com is the place to go. You'll find all of the helpful links in the show notes.